Great. We're going to be learning from the Haggadah. Okay, so Bezrat Hashem, we're going to have a good time. Hi, Lauren. Hi, Rachel. Wonderful. We're going to go straight into the Haggadah. Now, why we're going straight into the Haggadah is because we've only got maybe a couple more times. Wait a minute, let's see. Today's the 11th and we got the 18th. And I think that's probably it before Seder night. So I'm going to go straight into Seder night. Now, if we get a chance, we'll go into some of the Zohar about the actual difficulties of the children of Israel in Egypt. But for the most important thing we want to learn is Seder night itself. So we're going to go straight into that today. Okay? As Lisa's coming in. That's nice. Okay, great. Lovely. Okay, so we'll start off with our tefillah. Hi, Lisa. Very good. I waved. Now then, we shall do a... Where's my tefillah gone? I lost it. File.
I just had to find a Haggadah to follow.
Oh, okay. It's okay. I'll share my... I've scanned the pieces we need.
Yeah, but I just maybe.
Yeah, okay, great. All right, so let me share my screen. I keep forgetting how to do these things. Share screen. We'll do that. Right. There we go. All right, so we'll start off with our tefillah and then we'll go straight in. ריבון עולמים ואדוני אדונים, אב רחמן וסליחות, מודים אנחנו לפניך, אדוני אלוהינו ולאבותינו, בקידה בשתחוויה, שקרבתנו לתורתך ולעבודתך עבודת הקודש, ונתת לנו חלק בסודות תורתך הקדושה, מה אנו ומה חיינו, אשר עשית עמנו חסד גדול כזה. על כן אנחנו מפילים תחנוננו לפניך, שתמחו ותסלח לכל חטאותינו ועוונותינו, ואל יהיו עוונותינו מבדילים בינינו לביניך, וכן יהי רצון מלפניך, אדוני אלוהינו ולאבותינו, שתכונן את לבבינו ליראתך ולבבך, ותקשיב אוזניך לדברינו אלה, ותפתח לבבינו הערל בסודות תורתך, ויהיה לימודנו זה נחת רוח לפני כיסא כבודך כרך ניחוח, ותציל עלינו אור מקור נשמתנו בכל בחינתנו, שיתנוצצו ניצוצות עבודיך הקדושים, אשר על ידם גילית דבריך אלה בעולם, וזכותם וזכות טובתם, וזכות תורתם ותמימותם וקדושתם, יעמוד לנו לבן לקשר בדברים אלו. ובזכותם תראיננו במה שאנו לומדים, כמו אמר נעים זמירות ישראל, גל עיני והביט הנפלאות מתורתך, כי אדוני תן חוכמה מפיו דעת ותבונה, יהיו לו רצון ימי פי, והגיון ליבי לפניך, אדוני צורי וגואלי. Amen. כן יהי רצון. Okay. All right. So let's start off with our learning. It's very exciting stuff today. Now, thing we're going to start off with is, yes, Kaddish. Okay. You know, when we start off with the Seder night, okay, somebody wants to come in. When we start off with Seder night, we start off with Kaddish. Kaddish, Urchatz, Karpas, Yachatz, you know the rhyme, how it goes. And so we're going to start off with discovering what are the 4 cups of wine. Why do we have 4 cups of wine? Okay? Let me just check that that's the thing I wanted. Yes, that's right. Okay. So here we have Kaddish, and it's from my Haggadah, okay? And we start off with an intention which says, Hineni mukhan u'mezuman, here am I ready and prepared, l'kayem mitzvat kos rishon me'arba kosot, to fulfill the mitzvah of the first cup of the 4 cups of wine. L'shem yichud kudsha berichu u'shechinte, in order to unite the Holy Blessed One with the Shekhinah. Okay? The Holy Blessed One is like, in broad terms, is God, and the Shekhinah is all the souls. Okay? The Shekhinah is the indwelling God within us. All right? So it's unification of all the souls of Israel with God. Okay? Alidei hahu tamir v'na'alam. It's hidden from us. B'shem kol Yisrael, in the name of all Israel. V'inam Hashem Elokeinu aleinu u'mas yodenu konana aleinu u'mas yodenu konanehu. And may the pleasantness of the Lord our God be upon us, and may the work of our hands be established, and may the work of our hands be established. Okay. So that's the intention that we're going to start off with. Now, Rabbi Rav Ashlag brings the piece from the Zohar, okay, as part of his commentary on the Haggadah. And here, I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger for you so you can see it more clearly. There we go. And it's actually from the Zohar itself, but because we've got a lot to do today, I'm not going to bring the Aramaic. Usually when we learn the Zohar, we learn the Aramaic, and then we learn the Hebrew. But today, because we really do have a lot to do, I've taken it just from how it's printed in my Haggadah, and so we'll just learn it directly from the Hebrew. Okay? Amar Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says, Elu arba'a kosot shelaylahu lama. These 4 cups of wine that we drink on this night, why? What are they for? Amar Rabbi Abba. Rabbi Abba said, Harei ha'emidu haverim shem keneged arba geulot. Our companions in the Talmud have stated that they are for the 4 expressions of redemption. This is quite famous. We're going to look at it in a moment. V'hotzeti, v'hitzalti, v'ga'alti, v'lakachti. And I brought them out, and I delivered them, and I redeemed them. I need to translate it differently. And I will bring them out, and I will deliver them, and I will redeem them, and I will take them. And this is in Pesachim Tzadik Tet. It's actually the Jerusalem Talmud. I looked it up, and it's from the 4 expressions of redemption. Okay, so we've got 4 cups of wine, and they correspond to 4 expressions of redemption. Now, before we go any further, let's just see what he means. Okay? Here is taken from the piece in Shemot, okay, Parshat Va'era, when God tells the program what's going to happen, okay? V'yomer Hashem el Moshe, and God said to Moses, oh wait a minute, there's something in the chat before we start. Which Haggadah do I have? Okay, I have a Haggadah. Unfortunately, it's out of print right now. It's called Haggadah of Pesach V'zot Yehuda, with some explanations from Rabbi Ashlag. But it is out of print. I've tried to get more copies of it, and I haven't been able to. So I've scanned some of it, and I can. It's only in Hebrew. It's not a Hebrew English one, but I've got some pages scanned, and I'm willing to share with anybody who wants it my scanned pages. Okay, it's not the whole thing, unfortunately. Okay, V'yomer Hashem el Moshe, and God said to Moses, Ata tireh asher aseh leFaro. You will see what I'm going to do to Pharaoh. Ki biyad chazaka yeshalachem. For with a strong hand he will send them away. Ubiyad chazaka yegoshem me'artzo. And with a strong hand he will drive them out of his land. V'daber Elohim el Moshe. And God spoke to Moses. V'yomer elav ani Hashem. I am Hashem. Yud Kei Vav Kei. Ve'era el Avraham, el Yitzhak, ve'el Yaakov, be'el Shaddai. And I appeared to Avram, to Yitzhak, and to Yaakov as El Shaddai. Ushmi Hashem lo nodati lahem. But my name, Hashem, I didn't tell them. V'gam hakimotik brititam. And also I have established my covenant with them. L'tet lehem et Eretz Canaan, to give them the land of Canaan, et Eretz Megureihem asher garu ba, the land which they are living in, which they lived in. V'gam ani shamati na'akat b'nei Yisrael asher Mitzrayim mavidim otam. And now I have heard the cry of the children of Israel, how the Egyptians are oppressing them. Ve'ezkor et briti, and I have remembered my covenant. V'lachen emor livnei Israel, and therefore say to the children of Israel, Ani Hashem, I am Yud Hey Vav Hey. They're going to see how that's important in the four cups. V'hotzeiti etchem mitachat zivlot Mitzrayim. That's the first expression of redemption. Okay, it says, Ani Yud Hey Vav Hey. I will bring you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians. V'tzalti etchem me'avodatam. And I will deliver you from their service. V'ga'alti etchem b'zror netuyah. And I will redeem you with an outstretched arm, b'shvatim gdolim, and with great judgments. V'lakati etchem li la'am, and I will take for you to me for a people. V'ayiti lachem le'elohim, and I will be for you for a God. V'yidatem ki ani Hashem Elokeichem, and then you shall know that I am the Lord your God, hamotzi etchem mitachat zivlot Mitzrayim, who brings you out from the burdens of the Egyptians. V'veti etchem el ha'aretz asher nasati et yadi, and I will bring you to the land which I have raised up my hand, לתת אותה לאברהם, ליצחק וליעקב, to give it to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. ונתתי אותה לכם מורשה, אני השם, and I will give it to you as an inheritance. I am the Lord. Okay? וידבר משה אלוקינו בני ישראל, and Moses spoke all this to the children of Israel. ולא שמעו אל משה, and they didn't speak to Moses mikotze ruach me'avodah kasha, because they just hadn't the patience, because they were working so hard. Now, if we look at this from the understandings which Rav Ashlag gives us, okay, there's a few points that we need to remember. Okay. First of all, we're going to learn in the Mama of the Four Kosot that the Yud Hey Vav Hey, the 4 cups of wine, actually represents the 4 letters of the name of God. Okay? Yud Hey Vav Hey. Alright? That's why we have 4 cups. For Yud Hey Vav Hey. Now the Yud Hey Vav Hey is a completeness. It's the 10 Sfirot is Yud Hey Vav Hey. Okay? So here we're establishing God's name, Yud Hey Vav Hey, through the 4 ideas, for 4 expressions of redemption. So we have to first ask ourselves, what are we being redeemed from? Okay? The cry of the children of Israel that the Egyptians are enslaving them. What is enslavement of the Egyptians? It was not only a physical enslavement, but it was actually a mental, and emotional, and spiritual enslavement. What does that mean? It means that the Yetzer Hara, the will to receive for themselves alone, doesn't allow the children of Israel to serve God. That's the real enslavement. So, you know, it says in the Haggadah that every person needs to see himself as if he's coming out of Egypt. This is actually the issue. It's not a historical issue we're talking about only. We're also talking about a present day, current event inside each one of us. That we have the aspect of the Pharaoh within us. We have the aspect of the Egyptians within us. And this is our own enslavement, that our own egoism enslaves us. Okay? We all get enslaved by it. All right? Rav Ashlag, in an incredible letter, actually describes that the action of Pharaoh is that to sort of give oneself the idea that we can do Torah and mitzvot, so we get all happy, but and we get the idea in our minds that we can do something, but when it comes to actually bringing it through into practice, that's where the Pharaoh blocks us. So we get a dissonance between the mind and the body. We're able to think about doing Torah mitzvot, we get all excited, and then when it actually comes to doing it in practice, the body prevents us. Something stops us. Something stops that flow between the mind and the body. And we're talking about Torah shelishma, Torah for its own sake, unconditional giving. And the Pharaoh just stops us. And then actually, if we take the words, the letter of Pharaoh, if we look here, for example, Pei Resh Ayin, okay, Pharaoh, Hey, that's actually the same letters as Oref, the neck, okay? So it's Pharaoh stops us at the neck. The flow from the mind to the heart gets disrupted by that Pharaoh. So here we are, enslaved, okay? And what happens? V'eskoet briti. God remembers his covenant, okay? He made a covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. What's a covenant? A covenant is an agreement that you make in good times, okay, precisely for the bad times. That's a covenant. Like an example of a covenant between a man and a wife when they get married. Okay, we all know that when you get married, life doesn't always go smooth. Okay, difficulties arise in the relationship, but it's basically a covenant. Okay, in other words, that the marriage itself is a covenant that you've promised to each other, and that promises hold you together when life gets rough. Okay, that's a covenant. So here's God's made a covenant, and he's remembering his covenant. In other words, he made a covenant with our forefathers, and he says, okay, now's the time come. I will take you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians. In other words, I'll relieve you of the burden of your will to receive yourself alone. I'll relieve you from that egoism. And last time we looked at it from this perspective of getting rid of the chometz. Okay, this time we're looking at it from the God lifting us out from the burdens of the Egyptians, delivering us from serving our egoism, redeeming us with his outstretched arm and with great judgments. What is that? Well, when God redeems us with his outstretched arm, he gives judgment to the Egyptians. Okay? And I will take you to me for a people that will be able to serve God with happiness, and I will be for you for a God. Okay? Great. So there's a lot there. Let's have a look here. This is the Talmud Yerushalmi in Masechet Pesachim. Okay? And this is what it actually says. Erev Pesachim, סמוך למנחה לא יאכל אדם עד שתחשך, ואפילו עני שבישראל לא יאכל עד שיעשה, ולא יפחתו לו מ4 כוסות של יין, ואפילו מן התומכוי. Erev Pesach, close to Mincha, a person should not eat until it gets dark. And even the poorest person in Israel, the poorest of the poor in Israel, should not eat until he sits down to the Leil Seder. And he should not have less than the 4 cups of wine, even if he has to be supported from the community funds. Okay? Minayin la'arba kosot. Where do we get 4 cups of wine from? Rabbi Yochanan b'shem Rabbi Benaya keneged 4 geulot. And Rabbi Yochanan, in the name of Rabbi Benaya, says these are for the 4 expressions of redemption, which we just looked at. לכן אמור לבני ישראל אני השם, והוצאתי אתכם וכולי, ולקחתי אתכם לי לעם, וגומר, והוצאתי, והצלתי, וגאלתי, ולקחתי. Okay, these 4 expressions of redemption, and I will bring them out, and I will redeem them, and I will and I will deliver them, and I will redeem them, and I will take them. Okay? Great. So, let's go back to where we were. Okay? Right. So that is the Tanakh and the Talmud. Okay? For the 4 cups of wine. Now we're going to have a look and see what the Zohar has to teach us. אבל יפה הוא מבואר בספרו של רבי יוסף סבא. But very beautiful is what is described in the book of Rabbi Yosef Saba, שאמר, כיוון שהזיווג הקדוש נמצא בלילה ההוא בכל הצדדים, בין בחוכמה ובין החסדים, והזיווג הוא ב4 קשרים, שהם 4 מדרגות, שאינן נפרדות זו מזו כשהזיווג זה נמצא, שהן חוכמה ובינה, תפארת ומלכות. I'll translate that into English, and I'll translate that from Kabbalah language into ordinary language. Okay? What happens? Olel Seder, a very great light of redemption, pours into the world. Okay? It's the same light of redemption that took the children of Israel out of Egypt. Exactly the same light. Okay? Because the same energies come around year after year. Okay? So this great light, this holy zivug, the term for the light coming into the vessel is zivug. Okay? And it's a very great light indeed. Great light of Yedida, great light of redemption, is found on that night, and it's a complete light, b'kol tzaddim, from all sides. Bein b'chokhmah, whether we're talking about both the light of chokhmah, which is the light that comes down from God to us, okay, the light of that He wishes to give us according to the purpose of creation, great light of chokhmah. Bein b'chasadim, also through the light that we give back to God. How do we give back to God? We give back to God through the mitzvot that we enact on Seder night. Okay? That we have the Seder plate, that we have the matzot, that we have the maror, that we have the 4 cups of wine, that we tell the story, that we're joyful. Okay? All of that adds up to the vessels with which we can receive the great light. And this is described by Or the Hasadim, the joy of giving pleasure to God through this telling of the story and fulfilling the mitzvot of Seder night. Vazivug u ba'arba'a ksharim. And this light comes through in 4 connections, which are 4 stages of light, which are never separated from each other when this light is to be found. And this is Chokhmah. Chokhmah is for the letter Yud of God's name. Bet is Bina, that is Hey of God's name. Tiferet is Vav of God's name. And Malchut is the final Hey of God's name. All right? So here we have God's name. Okay? And we awaken with their joy. So we awaken with the joy. Wait a minute. Let me just decline that with a message. Right. Thank you. All right. So we awaken with God's name, with the joy of these 4 letters of God's name. And for that, Shotim Kenegdan Arba Kosot. And for the letters of God's name, to make up God's name, we drink 4 cups of wine. So what does this mean? It means that we are actually reenacting or recreating the name of God throughout the Seder night. We're like bringing God's name through the 4 cups of wine, bringing God's name in time through the 4 cups of wine on Seder night. Don't you think that's amazing? I think it's phenomenal. Every year I learn this, and every year I'm like blown away. Okay? All right, listen, something came through on the chat. What does it say? How are these words the 4 letters? How are these words the 4 letters? V'hotzeti v'itzalti v'ga'alti v'lakachti. I don't know, Nicole.
Okay.
A great Kabbalist would be able to see that connection between those 4 expressions and the 4 letters. The Rabbi Ashlag was certainly a great Kabbalist who was able to see those spiritual connections between the branches in this world and the physical roots in the world above. But I can't. I mean, I don't know.
It's okay then. I'll just accept it.
Yeah, that's
I'll just
it. I mean,
accept it. It's just hard to see how Teferet is a hey. I can't really see the connection.
yeah, no, I know. I mean, we just it was a brilliant question, and you're right to ask the question. I just can't answer you.
Okay.
We just have to accept that that is another way of looking why we're drinking the 4 cups. You've got the 4 cups, you've got the 4 expressions of redemption, and they make up Yud Hey Vav Hey. I
Okay.
mean, like, yeah. But it's a good question, though. I mean, a great Kabbalist would be able to tell you, but, all we can do is learn and be grateful that we've got a Rabbi Ashlag to tell us, or the Zohar to tell us.
It's all new to me, so I'm just listening anyway. It's good.
I mean, when I first
New
came
to me.
across this, I was blown away completely. Because to actually think that when we're at the Leila Seder and we're drinking the 4 cups of wine, we're actually creating God's name throughout the Leila Seder. I mean, I was blown away totally. It was just phenomenal. Okay. So, because we merited to this, whoever does the mitzvot and therefore provides the vessel for this light, merits for all levels of Yud Hey Vav Hey, or in other words, Chochmah and Bina Tiferet and Malchut. And therefore this light is different, this night is different, Mikol Sha'ar Leilot, from all other nights. We ask, Ma nishtana alayla zeh? Why is this night different from all other nights? He says this night is different. Why is it different? Because a complete light comes down to us. The great light of redemption comes down to us on this night, different from all other nights. And we need to prepare the vessels and unite God's name in every action that we do on Leila Seder, ulismach b'layla zeh, and to rejoice on this night, mishum shu simcha lamala or lamata, because it is a joy both above and below. Okay? Right. Wonderful. That's the piece I wanted to learn about the 4 cups of wine. And now I want to look at another aspect of Leila Seder. Where is it? I want my ke'ara. Here it is. Okay, and we're going to look at another aspect of Leila Seder, which also makes up God's name, and this is the Seder plate. It's another way that we create God's name on Seder plate. Now, Yud Hey Vav, I'm just going to put this in the chat a second. Where are we? How do I get there? Chat. There we go. Okay, so yeah. Yud, hey, oops, Vav, hey, okay, equals Chochma, Bina, Tiferet, and oops, Malchut. Okay. Now, Tiferet itself equals Chesed, Gevura, Tiferet, and Malchut. Okay, so Yud Hey Vav Hey actually is all 10 Sfirot. Maybe I should have written that in English. I'm sorry, I forgot. Never mind, that'll have to do for now. Okay, so let's see how we've got 10 Sfirot on the Seder plate. This arrangement of the Seder plate, by the way, is the one which the Ari taught. Okay, so there's different arrangements. This is the one of the Ari. And here you've got Chesed, which is the on the right hand line, which is the Zroah, the shank bone, okay, which represents God's outstretched arm, actually is for the Sfira Chesed, okay. Gvura is represented by the hard-boiled egg. Big why? Because it gets hard, I suppose. Tiferet, the middle line, is actually maror, the bitter herbs. And we're going to look at that because it's a fascinating idea. Why is the bitter herbs in the middle? Okay, we're going to look at that in a moment. Netzach is charoset. Okay, hod is kalpas. And yesod is the other type of the bitter herbs, you know, the chopped up sort. Okay, some people there use the chazeret. Okay, so you've got the last six, you've got 6 sfirot there, Chesed, Gevura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and the actual plate itself is the Malchut. So the plate with the elements on the plate are the last 7 sfirot, the Tiferet and Malchut, and the 3 matzot are actually Keter, Chochma, Bina. Okay? Some people say Chochma, Bina, and Da'at. And then the cloth you put over it, sometimes when you're covering it all up, would be Keter. So, but there's different ways of looking at that. But either way, the 3 matzot are the 3 higher sfirot. Keter, Chochma, Bina. These are together make up Tiferet, and the plate itself is the Malchut. So, how we get God's name? Okay. Keter and Chochma make the Yud. Okay. Chochma and Bina, those got the 3 matzot. So Keter, Chochma, and Bina make the 3 matzot. Okay, which we Yud, Hey, and this would be Vav, and the final Malchut would be Hey. The Ki'ara would be Hey. So also we have Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey represented on the table in the form of the Seder plate. All right? So I think this is just amazing because here we have Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey represented in the Seder plate on space, Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey represented in the cups of wine through time. All right, and I just think that is just phenomenal. Now I wanted to just look at the thing that really struck me when I first, okay, something's in the chat. Yes.
Okay,
Wow.
no, I wanted, can I ask the question then?
Yeah.
Why is there so many different ways of putting the Seder plate? There's a lot of different
Yeah.
customs for the Seder plate.
But they all have the same elements, okay?
Yeah, they all have the same food, but they're in different orders.
Yes, that's right. This is the order that the Ari teaches, and the Ari was the great Kabbalist who could really see the inner meanings of these elements. Now, Kabbalah, as you know, was hidden for many centuries. Basically, from the time of the Geonim, which was, I think, about the year about 4th century, maybe a bit longer, but not much more than that. Okay, it kind of went underground for quite a long period, and so the inner meanings of the elements got lost, and wasn't known. And only when the Ari came was the Kabbalah brought back into Judaism in a living way. Never really, I mean, it never died or anything like that. What actually happened, Rav Ashlag wrote about this, and he said that, in fact, there was the transmission of, not of the Kabbalah itself, but of the language of Kabbalah was interrupted, and people didn't actually know what it meant. And that's why you get these different arrangements. But the arrangement we've got here is actually the arrangement of the Ari. If you want to choose different arrangement, I think that's perfectly okay. Okay, this one represents how they are represented with the Sfirot. This is fine, whichever way you want to do it. But nevertheless, you've got all the elements there, and all the Sfirot will be present, and they will be Yud Hey Vav Hey is present. Let's have a look at this idea of Tiferet. Tiferet is the maror, is the bitter herbs. And the bitter herbs actually represent, being in the middle line, represent compassion. Now, when I first heard this, again, I was blown away. How are bitter herbs compassion? All right? Why is bitter herbs compassion? This doesn't make sense. Okay? And the answer is that so long as the children of Israel were assimilated with the Egyptians and accepted their way of life and didn't see the bitterness of their exile, they couldn't be redeemed. It was only when they began to see how bitter their exile was, and particularly the mental enslavement, the spiritual enslavement, and then they were able to cry out to God. And then God was able to hear their cry and start the process of redemption. But so long as they were accepting the mental and spiritual domination of the Egyptians, after all, in some ways they seem to have looked up to them. They were a very technologically advanced people. Okay? So long as you accept that, there's no, how could God take them out? They weren't ready to go. No light can come unless there's a desire for the light. Redemption couldn't come unless the children of Israel required redemption, wanted redemption, desired redemption. So it was only when they could actually taste and feel the bitterness of the exile and the bitterness of their enslavement was God able to take them out. In the same way for us in our present days, so long as we're using our egoism and our selfish love and our will to receive for ourselves alone, and it feels good to us, we can't get out of it. God, there's no place for us to go to. That God can't take us out and bring us to Torah for its own sake, so long as we're happy with doing either Torah for not for its own sake or just using our egoism. Okay? That's kind of the problem there. But when we are asking God to take us out, when we see the bitterness of our situation, that's actually a salvation in its own. So here you can see that the maror, the bitterness, is actually compassion. All right. Okay. Right. Now we've got 15 minutes left. All right. So we're going to do one more mitzvah. Okay. And this is going to be the mitzvah of telling the story. What's in the chat? Oh, amen. Yes, thank you, Lauren. How beautiful that we're able to gather here and learn these deep wisdoms so peacefully. Mamash, a miracle. You couldn't be more right. Okay. This mitzvah, okay, so the mitzvah of telling the story. This mitzvah is leva'er chametz, to take out the chametz. And this mitzvah was handed over to Israel whilst they were still in Egypt. And as we learn, the people took up their dough before it had leavened. And as it's written, that leaven should not be found in their houses. Okay. Ukvar Biruhu HaChaverim, and the companions have already explained it. And we looked at the inner meaning of Hametz and Matzav, of coming out of Egypt. That one, that the Hametz represents the evil inclination, and the other, the good inclination. And we looked at that last week. Now, Rachel has added something here. Compassion is felt between two entities. So is this compassion God is showing the Israelites? Absolutely. By showing us that our enslavement of our will to receive for ourselves alone is bitter. Yeah, that definitely. We don't come to that understanding on our own. It's a great illumination from God when we can see that our will to receive for ourselves alone is bitter for us. And Rav Ashlag actually says that this illumination, this insight, comes to us through the Torah. Okay, through learning Torah, this is what shines the light and gives us the bitterness of our will to receive for ourselves alone. And for the people of children of Israel when they were in Egypt, it gives them the bitterness of what happened then. Okay, so the following mitzvah, the mitzvah after getting rid of the chametz, is the mitzvah of telling the story. HaMitzvah שלאחר זו לספר בשבח יציאת מצרים, is to tell with the praise of the coming out of Egypt. שהוא חוב על האדם, it's obligatory for every person, לעולם, always, לספר בשבחים האלו, to tell of these praises. כך העמדנו. כל האדם המספר ביציאת מצרים, everyone who tells of the going out of Egypt, v'samech b'siporahu, and is happy in that story, b'simcha, with great joy, atidu lismach hashchina l'olam haba, he in the future will rejoice with the Shekhinah in the world to come. She's simcha mikol tzad, which is joy from every possible angle. Shezehu adam hasamech b'Adono, for the human being is happy with his Lord, rejoicing with God. V'HaKadosh Baruch Hu samech b'siporu shelo, and God is rejoicing in his story. Ba b'sha'ah מקבץ הקדוש ברוך הוא את כל החבורה שלו, ואמר להם, לכו שמעו סיפור של השבח שלי שמספרים בניי. In that moment, when God gathers together all his holy court, he says to them, come and listen to the story of my praise that my children are telling, ושמחים בגאולתי, and how happy they are in my redemption. As mitkaptzim kulam, all of them gather together, ובאים ומתחברים עם ישראל, and come and join with Israel, ושומעים סיפור השבח ששמחים בשמחת גאולה מאדונם, and listening to the story of the praise, that they are so happy in the joy of redemption from their master. And they come and thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Akol elu anisim v'gvurot, for all these miracles and mighty acts. Umodim lo al am HaKadosh yesh lo, and thank him for the holy people that he has. Ba'aretz, in the land. Okay, the Eretz is not just the land of Israel, but it's also the land of Israel. But it's also the land is the will to give. Okay, when we have the will to give in Torah, in giving to God, that is also called the land. Okay, the holy people who is in the land, who are happy with the joy of redemption of their master. So Eretz is also for people in Chutz La'aretz, okay, connecting with Leil Seder from the purpose of celebrating the redemption. K'dein etvasef le v'kuleh. Az nitvasef lo koach u'gvura lemala. Then is added to God strength and might above. Now, how can this be? How can we give strength to God? Surely he's all powerful. He goes on. V'Yisrael b'siporhu notnim koach ladonam. And Israel in this story are giving power to their master. Like a king who gets more power and might when we praise his hello. Okay, so that was my daughter just come in. Hello, darling. Be with you in 10 minutes. Who giving like a king who gets more power and might when we praise his might and give thanks to him. Okay. Now, what does it mean? When we're giving praise and thanks to God, and we're acknowledging God, and we're showing God and giving to God our faith, and we're giving to God our good deeds and our Torah, our mitzvot, we're actually coming to affinity of form with him. When we're in affinity of form with him, he's able to give to us. Because if we were in a situation where God wants to give and we want to just receive, then we're separated. But if we're giving the story, telling our praise, okay, we're coming closer and closer to God because we're giving to him. All right, we're thanking him. This brings us close to God, and then he's able to give to us. And since his purpose in creation is to give goodness to the created beings, therefore it's as if we're giving him power, because what it means is he's more able to give to us. Okay? And all have reverence for him. And his glory goes up over them all. And for this reason we need to give praise and tell this story. And therefore it's obligatory for the human being to always tell before God and give thanks to him and acknowledge him, and to publicize the miracle for all these miracles that he did. Ve'im tomar, and if you were to say, Lama hu chov lesaper et hanisim, why is it obligatory to tell these miracles? Halo HaKadosh Baruch Hu yodea kol. Surely God knows everything. Kol ma shehaya v'yeh lachar miken, all that there was and all that there will be afterwards. V'lama ha'pirsum hazeh lefanav al ma shu asa v'hu yodea. Why do we need to publicize it in front of him? After all, what he did, he knows what he did. But we answer, but of course we need to publicize the miracle, and to tell before him everything that he did, olot, for these words go up. These words go up. These words rise up. V'kol ha'pamalya shel mala, and all the heavenly court, mitkaptzim v'ro'im otam, gather together and see them. Modim lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, give thanks before God. V'oleh kvodo alehem lamala u'lamata, and His glory goes up over them, both above and below. Okay? So that's the mitzvah of telling the story. And again, I think the language of this is from the Zohar. It's a Parshat Bo, from the language of the Zohar, mitzvah to tell of this praise of the coming out of Egypt. And again, I think this language is this incredible. We do this every day in our prayers. Why is it different at Seder night? It's true, Rachel. We do it every day in our prayers, but it is different on Seder night, because on Seder night, it's the absolute energy of the coming out of Egypt is present at that moment. Okay? Every day in our prayers, also Nicole says on Seder night we tell our children, absolutely. But also on Seder night, you see, every day in our prayers, we remember the coming out of Egypt. Okay? On Seder night, it's the actual event. That's what we need to do. I want to tell you what happened to me. I'll just stop the showing a moment. There we go. I want to tell you what happened to me last Seder night. And I think this gives an answer. Because last Seder night, as you all know, we were in the middle of lockdown. And I had to do Seder on my own. So, because, you know, my kids couldn't come. And my husband passed away about 15 years ago. So there I was, the Layla Seder on my own. And I can mute everybody, I think. Let me do that for you. Wait a minute. Participants, there we go. Mute. Oh, here we go. Mute all. There we are. Okay, so I've muted everybody, and now everybody wants to speak. You just unmute yourselves, okay? Great. So what happened was I had to do Leila Seder on my own. So the way I felt, first of all, I really went into this piece that we've just read, because I felt that on the one hand I was on my own, on the second hand I definitely felt I was not on my own. All the heavenly court were with me, and all the angels were with me, and all my husband was with me, everybody was with me, so I didn't feel on my own. And the other thing was, I decided was to really take to heart what he says, that every person needs to see himself as if he was coming out of Egypt. In every generation, a person is obliged to see himself as if he was coming out of Egypt. So I took the idea that, and I said, and I just began Avadim Hayinu LePharaoh b'Mitzrayim. And instead of it me telling about my forefathers, I told it about myself. Yeah. And I just went through the whole Agoda as if it was me. The whole way through, I began it, and then I thought, no, I've got to do it like as if it's me. So Kaddish, Kiddush, I was singing away, I was like so happy I've come out of Egypt. And it was just it was actually an incredibly powerful experience. And I think, Rachel, yeah, it's a sort of reenactment, totally. And I think that that's what the difference is between Leila Seder and the prayers. Because you're right, we do thank God, and we do remember coming out of Egypt every single day, but it's a remembrance of coming out of Egypt in that sense. But on Leila Seder, all the energy of redemption is just totally there. And I think it's that's the difference. It might be that, a great tzaddik or something would feel the same as Leila Seder, during the rest of the year when he's saying those, coming out of Egypt. Remember coming out of Egypt. But I think for most of us, we need the energy of Leil Seder to truly experience it. But it's an experience. There you go. Okay.